Hi, I'm Jay Diamond, love and intimacy coach from jaydiamond.net. Today we're going to talk about how to forgive and move forward in a relationship because this is a question that's come to me a few times. I thought it'd be really worth sharing, and I'd be really interested to hear what you think and what kind of processes and techniques that you go through in terms of forgiveness in your relationship. I think this is such a big one because in any long-term relationship, you are absolutely bound to come across some sort of situation that requires you to practice forgiveness. And I really feel that it's a very strong part of our personal development journey and our spiritual growth. Like relationships are huge facilitators of spiritual and personal development, because they require us to really look at ourselves, our own beliefs, our own behaviours, and also to be in very close proximity with someone else who perhaps does things in very different ways and can probably trigger us the most. That's what I hear most when I'm working with couples, that the person they love the most also has the power to trigger them the most. So I don't know if that's the same for you. So yeah, let's talk about forgiveness. I think in terms of forgiveness, real true forgiveness, it's not just saying the words, I forgive you. And we'll talk about this from both sides, forgiving someone else and also when you're the one who wants to gain the forgiveness in the relationship, because let's be honest, we've all been on both sides, right? So if it's you that really wants to be able to forgive your partner and move on, one of the big aspects and parts of this is not just to hear the words and say I forgive you, but to actually be fully able to release rehashing that scenario over and over again in your head, and think this is what people really struggle with. And the only way is that if you decide that your relationship is mostly great and you really feel like it's worth saving and you're really upset with your partner's behaviour, but you know that most of the relationship is actually really good and they need some growth in that particular area, then there are a couple of elements to really think about. One is to help you really fully forgive. It's really important to know what your own boundaries are and how to express them. So that means that you know what is and what isn't acceptable for you, which might sound very simple, but actually a lot of people don't really know what their boundaries are until somebody comes bumping up against them, and then they don't know how to express how they feel or what's triggered them. They're just, you can be very reactive and say, that's out of order, you're out of order, you shouldn't have done that. But we don't express how our partner's behaviour makes us feel. So in one of my masterclasses, I'm going to send a link. Actually, I'm doing a free 3-day challenge for juicy, loving relationships, which you can sign up for. I'll put a link in the comments in a minute. We're going to talk about something called 3 layers deep communication, which is so important to actually, rather than just coming from the head of I'm right and you're wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right, and all this kind of stuff, we actually communicate on a heart level. And that's really important to start to think about and to learn if you really want to forgive and move forward in a relationship, because often part of forgiveness is our own ability to express. So sometimes we express to our partner how we really feel, how what they did made us feel, and what we need moving forward. Because sometimes we need a behaviour to change. Sometimes you really need an aspect of the relationship to change. It might be that they need to take more responsibility for the childcare moving forward. And once you know that that's going to happen, then it's easier for you to just let go, forgive what's happened, and then continue to move forward. If you think of it as like course correction, as we're all kind of moving through life and trying to achieve our end goals and get things done, sometimes we can end up going like this. So sometimes we need to course correct and say, okay, what's our vision for our relationship, and have that conversation. What do we really want this relationship to look like? Do you want it to be, full of strife and full of arguments? Where are you getting triggered? What am I saying and what am I doing that's triggering you? And is there something about my behavior or my expectation or projection that's causing my partner to react in a certain way? And quite often that's the case. So we also need to look at, where is my part in this, if any? And sometimes there really is. We need to be honest about that. Where is my part in this? And what can I adjust or what can I tweak to make things easier? And this is not about, not speaking up or not having boundaries. In fact, quite the opposite. It's about, how do I communicate in a way that's more effective for both of us, to move forward. And so it's really about making a decision to leave that difficult experience behind and decide that the relationship is worth saving and is worth more. So that means that every time you get that thought that comes into your head where you start to rehash and you're starting to worry, that you just have to kind of cut it dead and say, no, I'm not going to spend my time and energy going into what's happened and keep worrying about it. We've had the discussion, this is going to change, and I've decided to move forward. And you kind of have that conversation with yourself so that you're not continually in the energy of the difficult experience. Does that make sense? Because a lot of people that I speak to, they kind of keep reliving the injustice, and it's that really stops the relationship moving forward. They're so worried that it's going to happen again. And what happens is it becomes a power struggle then, because it's a huge ego slayer to come into a place of forgiveness when you're right, when your partner's done you wrong. To then, not to hold it as a point of power over them. So some people withhold forgiveness in the relationship because it helps them to keep the power in the relationship. Does that make sense? It's like, and usually it's not conscious. Sometimes it is, but often it's not conscious. But sometimes they can say, oh, well, I've got kind of moral superiority. I've got the moral high ground, and I can kind of use this for a while to, get my partner to do my bidding. And that's not real true forgiveness, is it? That's kind of, I'm using this for my own gain. Because it's a big ego slayer, when you're the one who has to ask for forgiveness as well, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But equally, when your partner's done you wrong and you're deciding to move forward anyway, and you're deciding to really let go of that energy of hurt, it's a big ego slayer. And that's why relationships are such a potent container for personal development, because we get to look at, like, how can, I have this experience and still choose to love. That's the big kicker, is to come back to this place of, how do I choose to love? How do I keep choosing to love? And sometimes, in order to forgive fully, you've got to kind of take yourself away for a while and do what you need to do to make yourself feel good, whatever that is, so that you can come back to a place of alignment within you, so that you can have a harmonious conversation with your partner without, splaying over into so much anger, without blaming and without shaming. Because this is where we can really get to the crux of, why did a problem happen and how can we move past it? And sometimes, with your boundaries, there are some hard no's. It's like, this is my boundary. This cannot happen again. And there are some things that we just have to have hard no's about, whether it's aggression or violence or cheating or whatever it is, for you. There are some things that just should be hard no's, but you can express that without a fight. Does that make sense? And even without kind of shaming the other person. It's just like, this is a no for me. And so what do you need to do to make sure that doesn't happen again? And if that person can come forward and show you and give you some appropriate feedback, like, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it. And if they don't offer that, you need to ask them for that. Okay, so what are you going to do to make it different? how are you going to handle the childcare or the money or the paperwork, at home, or whatever it is that comes up in your relationship, or your, crappy driving. Some of my clients, their partners just drive like maniacs, and they've got kids in the car and it's not on, and it's caused a real problem. So how do we negotiate our way through this? And part of it is like dropping the scorecard as well. Like, that's part of ego slaying, is that you're not keeping this scorecard whereby you're like, okay, now I did this right, and you did that wrong. Because again, this is all about power and control in the relationship, which is like, it can so easily sneak in, but it's really about dropping that scorecard altogether. So I can see there's quite a few of you online, so please just pop me a message below, and if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer. So yeah, let me know what you think. And have a think about, do you need your partner to keep paying over and over and over again for the same mistake? Because again, that's about power and control. And if it's the other way around, sometimes you're the one who has messed up and you need to make an apology in the relationship. I would urge you to be specific, because often what happens is people just say sorry, but it becomes quite empty. Basically, they're just like, I'm sick of arguing. Somebody will give in and apologise, but it doesn't actually mean much because it's not specific and there's no sort of plan around it. They'll just say, oh, I'm sorry. And they're like, well, what are you sorry about? Which part of what's happened, So what you can say, if something's a little bit more serious has come up, or maybe you've split up with your partner because of something, and then you want to kind of bring them back into the relationship, you can say something like, listen, I've spent some time reflecting on what was going wrong, and I realised that it's not just about you and me, it's about me and the things that are going on inside of me, and what I believe, and what I feel I need and don't need. And these are some of the reasons that I think that this problem happened. And then you would be able to explain, like, I was feeling insecure about something or other. I had a lot of stuff going on at work, and instead of managing my own emotions, I was taking it out on you. I was worried about money, and instead of discussing it with you, I just hid it, or whatever the issue was. And then you can say, listen, I realised that I need some self-improvement in that area, and this is the kicker, okay? And here's what I've done, and here's what I'm going to do to improve it. Because if you can show and prove to your partner, not just like, oh, I'm really sorry that I did that and I messed up and I won't do it again. That's not often enough. If relationships at quite a critical point, it's just to say, I'm sorry and I won't do it. Like, what are you actually going to do to change that pattern of behaviour that you might have had for 5, 10, 15 years? And if you can show them to your partner and say, this is the plan, this is what I'm going to do, and I want to make it better, and I want you to let me make it better, can we grow and move forward? You're much more likely to get the response that you want. You're much more likely for that partner to say, okay, I can see you've actually really thought about this, and you've got a plan, and you've started working on yourself, whether that's, I'm going to do some meditation or self-improvement, or I'm going to go to the gym to kind of relax my mind and my body, so I've got rid of the stress before I come home. You're much more likely for your partner to say, okay, all right, there's a plan, then we can go from there. Does it make sense? So these are some of the ways that we can really move forward and create forgiveness in a relationship. And sometimes you just have to go inside your own heart and ask yourself, what do I really need to let this go? What is the belief in me that's keeping me stuck, that means that I can't let go? And sometimes it's a belief and a fear that you'll lose power in the relationship, that you'll end up being a doormat, that, I don't know what else, like you fear that you'll be controlled if you forgive. You know, it's like if I forgive this, let's say it's a small issue, what if it gets worse? And these kinds of beliefs come up that actually prevent us, and it's like we lock the relationship down before we give it a chance to grow because we're so scared that something worse might happen. Does that make sense? Jackie said, thanks for this, Jay. I do appreciate the time with this video. The universe really does have my back. Yes, Jackie, the universe does have your back and all of our backs. How can it get better? How can we create more juicy, loving relationships? I'd love to see you on my 3-day challenge, which starts next week. I'm going to put, actually, let me see if I can put a link in the comments now. And then if you've got any more questions, you can just pop that. Oh, there we are, I'm clicking away. You can pop that in. Hi, Paul. I'm not going to read your question out because of the language that you've used. It depends what you want. If you feel like your partner is cheating on you, it depends if you want her back or not. Do you feel like she can change? Does she feel like she can change? Do you want her back? If you don't want her back, then there's no point having the conversation. But if you do, the thing is, when we've had a relationship, even if we don't want that person back, it's very important to forgive so that we don't take the anger into the next relationship. Because what I see a lot is that people take the anger from what their partner did to them in their last relationship into the next relationship with a really great person, and they make the next person pay for their ex's mistakes, and it completely destroys what could have been a really great relationship. Because often, you know, forgiveness, we think that forgiveness is for the other person, but actually forgiveness is for ourselves, you know, because it makes us feel better. And so somebody's put a message, never forgive. Well, you're the one who's carrying all that resentment. You get to carry it. It's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. You're going to be waiting a long time because you're the one that's drinking the poison. You're the one that's holding all the anger, all the resentment. And then you take it into the next relationship, the next relationship, the next relationship. And you wonder why your relationships don't work. Because you're holding resentment and you project that anger onto your partner, and what happens is you start to see things wrong with them that are not even there, because your perception is so tainted by anger and resentment. And that happens inside of our relationship. You know, we start to see that, oh, they're doing this, oh, they're doing that, and then we attach a meaning to it. It means they don't care. It means they're going to cheat on me. It means they're not bothered about me. It means they put me last. Where actually it might not mean that at all, but because you still haven't forgiven the last thing that they did, you're still trying to make them pay. Does it make sense? So, you know, really forgiveness is for us, and that's across the board. Like if you check out my book on Amazon, Abuse to Abundance, which is for adult survivors of physical, emotional or sexual abuse, there's a whole chapter on the F word, which is forgiveness, because many of us find it really, really hard, and we think that we're making the other person pay and that we're punishing them by not forgiving them. Meanwhile, the other person's getting on with their life, and you're the one suffering, angry, resentful, still going over the situation in your own head over and over and over again. It's just yourself that you make miserable, nobody else. And you don't deserve that. You deserve to be free. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to have great love. And you deserve to have a great person. So, yeah, that's what I think you deserve. And when you come into a place of forgiveness, then it's easier for you to have that. So I hope that helps you. If you have any more questions, you can always pop a message below. I'd love to see you on the 3-day challenge, and I'll see you later. Bye.